Welcome to Population 1.3. Last lesson I asked you to analyse these two area graphs. Please make sure you do that. It is good practice. We see a lot of data on past exams that look similar to this. This is an area chart where the total area of that colour represents the value. At any given point in time, you are looking at the width. Note how trend observations, so what I've written here, are followed by quantitative data. The units for the y-axis are visible here as a subheading. So I'll let you read through these later. But what we see here is consistent with the trend that we're seeing over time, which is that low income and lower middle income countries are declining, and they're increasingly more upper middle income and high income countries. But what's interesting about population by income group as a percentage of the total population is that while the percentage of the low income countries have dropped dramatically, and lower middle income and upper middle income now make up the bulk of the percentage of the global population, which is pretty consistent with when we talk about the middle classification as a factor contributing to the increase in international tourism arrivals and departures, right? 80% of the world's population is now classified in this area. And note how high income percentage remains relatively constant throughout time. Today, we are focusing on our uneven population distribution case study, Papua New Guinea. So how is Papua New Guinea's population unevenly distributed? Why? What is Papua New Guinea's economic development level? And what do we mean by core periphery patterns? How does this relate to Papua New Guinea? Look at the distribution of Papua New Guinea's population. It is unusual because a large proportion of the population is inland in the mountain valleys or the central highlands. A lot of Papua New Guinea is made up of a lot of smaller islands, including New Britain and Bougainville. Let's look at the topography. This is the island of New Guinea. Papua New Guinea occupies the eastern part, and Indonesia occupies the west. So we can see that there's a spatial association between areas with high elevation and high population density. Why is this the case? Well, the central highlands and valleys have higher population densities because of the physical factors and human factors. So it is surprising because it's less accessible to, traverse areas that are 4,000 meters above sea level to get to the valleys where most of the population, where the higher population densities are located. But it's also more difficult for mozzies. Due to the higher altitudes of the mountains, there are much cooler climates, which are too cool for malaria parasites, where the climates in these mountainous regions are usually below 20 degrees Celsius, in comparison to the coastal areas, low-lying and warmer tropical type climates, where malaria is much more of an issue. Pop quiz time. The GNI, we looked at economic indicators last lesson. The GNI of Papua New Guinea is $4,350 in 2023. How would we classify it based on its economy? The answer is B. It is considered a lower middle income economy. Now, with that uneven population distribution, we see that there are issues related to this. So insufficient tax revenue due to lower populations and a lower workforce. Therefore, the government is unable to provide basic services such as education and healthcare in those locations. Cash crops which are exported, such as cocoa, coffee, and copra, which is dried coconut meat that is then used to produce coconut oil. These are the main cash crops. But the high costs of transporting and exporting, combined with low competition, have led to lower prices and exploitation from European countries in the past, and even at present, their buying power is a lot lower. Overpopulation in other parts of Papua New Guinea, in particular areas that are mining towns or have rich volcanic soil. That's another reason why the population is distributed in those locations that I forgot to mention. Okay, volcanic soils are rich in nutrients, which means that the growing of crops is a lot more dependable, and also there's higher and more predictable rainfall levels in those mountainous areas as well. Okay, so overpopulation leads to food shortages, overexploitation of the land, leading to soil degradation and difficulty with growing anything on those soils ever again due to the lack of nutrients, and then land disputes as well. And so this all leads to internal migration, okay? Movement from one location to another within the boundaries of a country. Okay, so world systems theory was created by Immanuel Wallerstein in the 1970s. It claims that rich core capitalist countries succeed by exploiting the poorer peripheral ones. And in between are the semi-peripheral societies, considered the global middle class. And so consistent with what we were learning last lesson, the Western nations, or the top 20 countries on the Human Development Index, are considered the core. And then we have all of those acronyms, CIVETS, BRICS, you name it. These are our emerging economies, or known as the semi-periphery. And then we have the continent of Africa, South America, and the subcontinent of Southeast Asia as the periphery. Where do we think Papua New Guinea is in this model? Here we can see that it is considered a periphery. So this is an activity on your worksheet. To what extent do you see periphery, semi-periphery, and core in these pictures? Right. This is actually a map of flight paths and their frequency. Right. On your worksheet, there's also World at Night, where you can see some of those well lit up areas are mega cities, right? Or just urban centers with better technological, with more advanced technology, higher populations, higher connectivity. You can access this yourself and have there's better resolution on this website. So NASA developed this map. All right, so even within, so when you look at Papua New Guinea, one of the main exports is gold and copper. And so we see a lot of mining and rural urban migration to these mines as well. For example, the mining towns in Bougainville Island have over 90% of their population being born elsewhere. Rural to urban migration occurs for job opportunities. And then the underpopulated areas experiencing issues are predominantly rural subsistence agriculture areas. So we see core periphery patterns within countries as well. Access this website to look at more economic data. I want you to finish off the activities from last lesson before moving on, and look at this instruction carefully because it's not in your worksheet. Complete these questions and in your notes, make sure you have a paragraph explaining why the population is distributed in this pattern. You'll be doing some practice questions tomorrow, and your presentation will be postponed to the following week. All right, thank you.